We have often heard stories about women in the Bible and the challenges they faced. We know about Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Elizabeth. We've heard stories about Esther. This one happens to be the favorite for many. We know Ruth, who landed herself the handsome and wealthy Boaz. In this video, we'll talk about others who many people do not know or speak about, but who also have life-changing experiences that would make you proud of this gender. Let's start with the daughters of Zelophehad. Their names: Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. These were five sisters whose father had died without having a son. The father's property was at the risk of being given to the father's relatives since he had no son. Now, these five sisters marched to Moses to present their case with facts. Understand that in these times, this wasn't an easy thing to do and probably had never been done. The sisters stood before Moses, Eleazar, who was the priest, and the whole assembly. I can only imagine what the assembly or what the people in the assembly were thinking or even saying. I imagine a lot of smirks on their faces. Well, the sisters contested, saying how their father died and how they should be given property among their father's relatives. Even Moses didn't know what to do, and so he consulted the Lord. And the Lord affirmed to him that the sisters were right. God asked Moses to not only give them property, but also made a rule that inheritance goes to daughters as well. So it only will go to relatives if the man had no sons and no daughters. This was a life-changing rule made because these sisters stood up for themselves. Secondly, let's talk about Naomi. Most of us associate Naomi's story with that of Ruth. Rightly so. But Naomi also has her own profound story, a very sad one. First, a famine drove her from her homeland to her new destination, and in this new destination, death took her husband and her two sons, leaving behind her daughters-in-law. Left with nothing but her daughters-in-law, she could have given up, but in her sorrow she picked herself up and went back to the beginning. She went back home. But even in this, through her guidance, her daughter Ruth found redemption. Talk about women supporting women. Naomi is an example that teaches us that even in loss there is hope, and that in hardship there purpose can be found. Next, let's talk about Deborah. Deborah the warrior. Deborah was one of the judges that led Israel when Israel had no king. She was a prophetess, and she led with wisdom and courage. Her strength and bravery was visible to all, so much so that even when God told Barak that he would deliver the enemies into his hands, Barak still said to Deborah, "If you will go to war with me, then I will go. But if you don't go, then I'm not going anywhere." She was a force, showing us and teaching us courage. Courage to stand against opposition, like the enemy commander Sisera, showing us the will to stand even when others shrink away. How can I not mention Bathsheba? This is one that a lot of people have varying opinions about. I once heard it being preached, and the preacher said, "Why will Bathsheba be having her bath outside?" I just rolled my eyes when I heard this. Even the Bible itself tells us that David climbed the roof of the palace, and that was where he saw her bathing. Just imagine a palace and now being at the top of the roof. Sounds to me like he would have been able to see a lot of things, planned and unplanned. The Bible never mentioned that she knew he would be there anyway. So where do people even get their stories from? Anyway, let's get back to it. It just sounds like gaslighting to me. In Samuel, 2 Samuel 11:26 to 27, it says that when Uriah's wife heard, Uriah's wife is Bathsheba. If you don't know this, you need Bible studies. Anyway, the verse reads that when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. Verse 27 says, David had her brought to the house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. Yes, she had slept with David, but let's not forget, David was the king. And he wasn't just any king, he was a mighty king. So we don't know what transpired between these two for sure. Anyway, her story shows a woman who endured scandal, heartbreak, and loss. But she was more than a victim. She became queen and rose above her pain. She is the mother of Solomon, the wisest king in history, proving that even in the darkest moments, a woman can overcome. I'll end this video with the story of Judith. The book of Judith is not found in every Bible, but I grew up Catholic and I've read this story and I continue to remember this story. So Judith was a widow who entered the enemy's camp with a strategy. She was a beautiful woman. So dressed in her beauty but armed with bravery, she had entered the camp, befriended the general, and when the time was right, she struck. With this act of courage, she befriended Holofernes, who was the commander, and saved Israel from destruction. In case you don't know, here is what she did. She cut off the general's head and took the head back home to Israel. This was what gave Israel inspiration to attack the enemy. There are so many other stories of women that did mind-blowing things. We hear about Jael, we know Tamar, we know Rahab. The list goes on and on. One thing is for sure, women are survivors. Women are strong. They always have been. They always will be. Happy International Women's Day. If you guys need more of this kind of stories, like women's stories showing strength, comment women and I'll get to do another one for you. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.